Our next storyteller, when asked, what is one of your favorite things about New York City? He answered, an open firehouse door, because all of the children and people of all ages, when the firehouse door is open, wave and smile at you. Please welcome Joe Gillen.
Okay. I can hear me. I hope you can hear me. I've got what is left of my voice, because I've been practicing this story since I was very, very young. As a matter of fact, since the spring of 1961, I think I've been waiting to tell this one. I woke up in the morning, and I was hungry. And I proceeded to go downstairs and found very little to eat, except that my parents had had a party the night before and had left what are called Manhattan glasses all over the place. Manhattan glasses are made of vermouth, whiskey, and a Maraschino cherry. And if you have any class at all, you leave the Maraschino cherry. And so I found those Maraschino cherries. And I decided to delight myself in the morning by eating them. One, and then two. And then after a few moments, I started to dip them in. And then consumed about 15 or 17 of them. They had quite a party, and so did I. I escaped back up to my room. The reason I wasn't allowed to eat in the morning was that I was going to receive communion in a few weeks, and my parents had decided to start to train me. When you were Catholic, you could not eat before you received your communion in the morning. They were starting me off, disciplining me months before it was going to be done. And I will tell you that it was one of the toughest days I ever tried to get ready for church, because this was a Sunday morning. My mother had to help me get dressed, and this was something new for her. And after finally bickering and bantering, she had me, and I looked something quite like this, getting ready for church. And she drove me up in the 57 Chevy and dropped me off for the 9 o'clock children's mass. And let's face it, I was pickled. And of course, I got an aisle seat, and I proceeded to try and hold myself up erect and try not to shift and chamois around, and was not having a good time doing it. And it became time during the ritual of Mass to kneel. This is not an easy task for a 7-year-old or an 8-year-old, because your nose comes up to the rail of the next seat, and you're holding on as it is. And when you're drunk and on an aisle seat, you tend to slouch. Just a tad, and then a tad, and then a tad. And an usher decided this is not a good way for a little child to worship the Lord, and came up behind me and hit the back of my head. Don't hit 8-year-old drunk children. They don't like it. So the little boy stood up and turned and gave him one. And guess where he hit him? Figure size and figure where it landed. And yep, he went down, and he went down hard, because I had hit him in his little area. And he went down and hit his head on the railing of the next bench and went down for the count. And I was very proud of what I had just done. A nun came up behind me and was not proud of what I had just done. And she grabbed me and she scared me, and I was very frightened, and she raised me up and she said, "What did you do?" And I said, "Very little, if you see what I'm about to do to you." Because I gave her back all those cherries and everything else that was in my stomach. I would have made Linda Blair proud. This, of course, has its own horrible repercussion, because she grabbed me by the throat now and dragged me into the back of the church, which is one of the last things I remember about that whole day. I think they brought in nuns from different kingdoms to beat the crap out of me. The flying nun came in and knocked me out. The singing nun tuned me. I don't remember a lot of that day, because I was beat pretty hard. And the nuns noticed that I was smashed, and they were very upset with my parents, who had to come to school the next day and explain why they had sent their child to school drunk as a skunk. I had very little to say because I didn't even know that I had done anything wrong. I had no chance to say, well, I came downstairs and ate the cherries and got drunk, because I didn't even know about that. My father had to beg these nice people not to throw me out of school. And that was probably the worst thing he ever did for me, because you put a bullseye on me, because that was the day Gillen the villain was born. So between then and when I graduated from the 8th grade, I was a target. And I was a nasty, nasty, hurt person for this, because they had begged me to stay in that school. So when I came home and I told my mother what was happening to me, she didn't believe me. I couldn't even explain what was happening because I didn't even know what it was about. But I was a human target. In the year 2001, a lot of nice people who worked at my firehouse and other firehouses in the city of New York died. And out of that, I have returned back to Christ. But it took me that and that incident to happen. But how that happened, I have to come back and see another story. Thank you very much.
Joe Gillen.